welcome to the Sound Solutions podcast with MusicWorks. My name is Angela, and I'm excited to share with you today. We're going to be doing a global perspectives little mini-series for the podcast. So we're going to hear from music therapists who've done work in different parts of the world, and just to hear about their experiences and to get their perspectives on what that work is like and what have some of the challenges been, and what are the things that we can learn from music therapists, educators, and allied healthcare professionals in the U.S. about working with diverse populations. So I wanted to welcome today Brooke Wilder, who's a music therapist. Thank you for being on the podcast with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
So I am from Boston, Massachusetts. I am a music therapist, and I work mostly in special education, geriatrics, and veterans affairs.
Mm-hmm. So where has your global work taken you?
I have been really fortunate to have been able to take my work to East Africa. I work for I'm the founder of an organization called the Ubuntu Music Therapy Initiative. Mm-hmm. And we work in Kenya and Uganda right now.
That's really awesome. And so how did you get involved, or how did you start doing global work? What was the draw for you?
So when I was in college, I went to Berklee College of Music, and I had a professor there named Karen Wax. And she had gone over to Uganda and set up this music therapy program in a center for former child soldiers. And Berklee had donated a bunch of instruments and technology equipment and all these things. And so I was able to participate in facilitating telemusic therapy with these kids. And it was just really such an eye-opening experience for me. And it really kind of lit this lifelong passion within me for service and providing access to services where they wouldn't otherwise exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I think earlier you mentioned that you did some music therapy service work in other parts of the world too.
Yes, I was part of Cayman Music Therapy and Music Therapy Without Borders annual trip. When I was in college, I got to go with Julianne Paralisi and do some work there as well.
That's really awesome. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your programs in Kenya and Uganda and what that looks like.
Sure. So in Kenya, it is a little bit more developed than our work in Uganda at the moment. But what we do as an organization is we really strive to create sustainable music therapy programs that would truly work for the people that we work with. And we do that collaboratively to ensure the sustainable portion of it. Mm-hmm. So while we are there, we work to train local community musicians on how to use different therapeutic music techniques in three main areas that we've seen a big need for. So special education, hospital settings, and trauma and community empowerment. Mm-hmm. We have developed these training toolkits that we leave as resources, so then the people we train can then continue to go out in their community and train other members. Mm-hmm. And this year was a really big year for us because we had our first ever certificate training program that was sponsored by the Ministry of Sports and Culture in Kenya. Mm-hmm. And so we had our very first graduating cohort of music therapists from the certificate. We had 96 participants get certified.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was
so cool. So these
crazy.
Participants are teachers and therapists and everything.
Yeah, they're a little bit of everybody. We have people who are singers and songwriters. We have dancers. We have teachers. We have nurses. We have parents. We have all different sorts of people who are just interested in learning about how they can use music for healing and music to address certain goals in their lives and in the lives of those they love. Mm-hmm. So it's been really special. And Uganda's similar too, but we're working more on providing direct services and advocacy efforts as opposed to the education portion of it. Mm-hmm.
So what I'm curious about is how you approach developing these types of programs and how you approached, you as a therapist coming from a Western country going into a different culture. And what was that process like for you?
Sure. So I think when it comes to the development of the program, and also for me going into a different culture. You know, it really started with an exploratory position. What is pre-existing? What are the needs of the community? What are the wants of the community? What are the limitations of the programs that we could develop? You know, we can't, I think anytime anyone does some work abroad, you need to take into consideration that it is a different culture than you, and that people there don't necessarily have access to the same things that we have. So we need to if I were to bring over American music therapy to Kenya, it would not work, you know. So I've been really passionate about working directly with members of the community to create something, because I could go there for 6 months or a year or 5 years, but I will never have the perspective of somebody who has lived there their whole life and is an active member of the community and the culture. So really working collaboratively to create these programs has been just one of the main focal points. And then also on the US side, collaborating with people from lots of different disciplines, lots of different educational backgrounds. We had a girl last year on my team who was an NMT from Canada. So, you know, we really want this to be kind of a global effort, and to have music therapy be represented on a more global scale, you need to diversify yourself and your team.
Yeah, no, that's a great, that's awesome to hear. I absolutely agree with you. I think that collaboration is so important. Like in my work in India, you know, I could come up with so many ideas on my own of, you know, what I could do and how I could bring music therapy in the community. But it's really the experiences that have been the most impactful and effective are when leaders from the community are coming to you and saying, hey, we love what you're doing, and can you provide this also? Because then, you know that you're really meeting the need rather than imposing something.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to my next question, because especially in our diverse and increasingly global world, that also comes with tension and conflicts and misunderstanding between different cultural groups and people of different, like, diverse populations. I know that there's a lot of controversy regarding global programs led by sort of Westerners, either from the US, Canada, or Europe, and going into different countries that are maybe underdeveloped or that don't have access to the same types of programming that we do. And so what are your perspectives on that issue?
I have lots of them. But yeah, so, you know, this is something that I think in this field of work doesn't get talked about enough. We have a really big problem in this country with volunteerism. And I think, you know, service projects and things, they have their place, and oftentimes they come from a good intention, but at the end of the day, intention doesn't matter. You know, it's the effects of what you actually do. So ways that I think that we could work to combat this, and ways that I've tried to implement it, is to go in completely understanding that you don't know anything, right? Having a completely open mind, being humble, having that humility, that if somebody calls you out and they're like, hey, our very first training, we had a guy who was sitting in there kind of looking like he was a little skeptical in the corner. When we asked for questions, he raises his hand. He goes, why are you not just another Western white lady coming in telling us how to do things? And I totally understand his perspective, because, you know, that a lot of people come into a foreign place that's not their own, tell them that they're doing everything wrong, do it my way, it's better, you know, but says who? And so really checking in with myself constantly, checking my own biases, doing work to educate myself, working with members of the community, seeking outside supervision and resources from other people who run NGOs or people who are on the receiving end of NGOs. You know, like, what do you like about working with NGOs? What do you not like? What do you wish was different? And working to constantly educate myself, and knowing that, like, this will be a lifelong thing that I'm always doing. I will never be proficient, you know, it's always going to be a consistent thing that I'm improving upon and learning upon. And I think that if we can kind of change the narrative of, like, the Western savior, you know, and really focus on the amazing and resilient and powerful people that are in these countries and looking at it through a different lens and not the one that we've been conditioned to believe. I hope that that perception can change.
Yeah, what are some of the issues that might come with individuals or groups of people that are coming in with this perspective of like, oh, I want to help these poor people, and maybe imposing some of their own ideas and perspectives and approaches? What are the implications of that?
I think they're serious, and people who go over to do these types of work, you need to really ask yourself, what are you bringing to the table? What is your relevant skill set? How will it improve the lives of other people?
Could you provide some examples of things that have happened or things that could hypothetically happen in a situation where maybe that community building is not the focus, or a focus on sustainability is not there? And what are some harm that can actually be done? Do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, so I think if you are not realizing the impact that you truly have on a community, you can go in with the best of intentions, but like I said before, at the end of the day, your intentions don't matter. It's the impact. So you go into a place, you're working in a children's home or an orphanage, you're trying to do this good thing. You have good intentions. Your compassion is there, but you're really not being empathetic. You're being sympathetic. So you go into this place, you see all these, look at these poor children, they have no one to love them. You go there, you're playing with the children, you make attachments with the children, then you leave. Then you never come back. You're fostering all of these sorts of unhealthy ideas of attachment. You're reinforcing these kind of negative stereotypes, and you're damaging kids, And so I think when people go in to do something, you really, really, really need to think deeply about what are the long-term effects of what I'm doing. And if you cannot provide a sustainable way to work on your stuff, if you don't have a plan for long-term effects, that should be the first foremost thing that you do, is to formulate a plan for longevity of a program. It's not a one and done type of thing. And I think a lot of people think that you go over, you volunteer once and that's it. But it has to be something that you're passionate about, because programs will, even if you make a program, they'll evolve, they'll grow. You're going to have to change it. We live in an ever-changing world. It's not going to be successful forever. So knowing that and continuing to develop, I think, with the members of the community who can continue to change it as their world changes is the best way to kind of combat those negative repercussions of volunteerism.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I was hearing you mention is this idea of sustainability and long-term impact and building capacity and community building, because I think that especially for us as music therapists, we do have a lot to offer to the table. We do have a lot that we can bring to communities that don't have access to the same types of resources that we can provide. So there's a place for us there, but we just have to make sure that we're doing that in the right way.
Yeah. If you are interested in doing work in East Africa, particularly, or just in general, there's a really great account on Instagram about this exact topic called No White Saviors. It's run by 3 Ugandan women, and they are talking about firsthand kind of the repercussions they've seen from this toxic compassion. So if you're interested in learning more about it, I would really suggest checking that out.
And so kind of to flip it around, what are some of the beautiful or exciting and I guess just like meaningful moments that you've experienced through these cultural exchanges? What was that experience for you to come in, with your background and your culture, and to be learning and teaching and having this sort of interaction with individuals and communities that are so different from your own?
I would say, first off, that the people of East Africa are some of the most loving, amazing, welcoming, wonderful, beautiful people that I have ever had the privilege of meeting in my entire life. So from the moment I stepped off that plane, I felt welcomed, I felt at home, I felt like the work that we were doing was really understood at a core level. And I think that portion of it has been one of the most amazing things about doing music therapy work because here, you know, in the U.S., oftentimes we're trying to explain, what is music therapy? I don't really get it. How is music used for healing? Whereas it's such an innate part of the culture over there that they already understand that therapeutic value and the therapeutic meaning of it. So just to kind of elevate it, as far as like little tidbits of favorite moments I've had more than I can count, but there's this one place we work at in a slum called Kibera, called Magoso School. It is this beautiful, happy, gated, amazing little oasis in an otherwise very crowded, kind of overwhelming place, you know. And the first time we walked into Friends of Magoso, I was just completely struck by the school itself. And there's like over 300 kids. They have a special education classroom. And so not only are they working to provide education to children who are in the slum and wouldn't otherwise have access, they are addressing the needs of special education. And they have a really amazing choir and dancers, and they have musicians. And so we got to participate in this beautiful exchange. You know, we do a song, then they want to show us a song. And it was just such a wonderful collaborative experience. And most of my time in Kenya and Uganda has been that kind of back and forth, which has been such a lovely thing to feel. It's not I'm leading and they're following or vice versa. It's really a symbiotic relationship, which has just been different and wonderful.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, since we're music therapists and we talk about music, I'm curious to hear about what was your experience with the musical interactions? What type of music is prominent in that culture, and what is the role of music in the community?
Yeah, totally. So, man, as far as music, it's everywhere. It's all the time. You know, everybody's singing and dancing, and it's constant. And everybody is so good at it, like, as so talented, you know? And so obviously, you know, in Africa, there's lots of drumming and percussion and so the most beautiful drums you will ever see in your life. So that's something that really has stood out to me, is that everyone loves to drum and dance together and sing collaboratively together. But as far as musical preference, something that I found to be really surprising is, particularly working with kids, they love Western pop music. Oh, do you know Justin Bieber?
Yes.
This year we were getting asked to sing Despacito. So it was like a triple kind of cultural exchange.
My students in India also love Justin Bieber. So I think there's like some global, you know, pop culture as well. That's hilarious.
The Biebs makes it around, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, great. Man. But yeah, so that, you know, as far as the preference of music, it's kind of all over the place. There is religion and faith that is also very important and prominent in the culture. So a lot more spirituals and things like that. But I would say that probably the biggest takeaway for experiencing the music of their culture, you know, has been how much of a important part of life it is. Every day, I think people saying, when we were having our training, we had a woman say, you know, I didn't realize it, but we've been doing music therapy all along, you know, because therapeutic music healers have been in their communities for years, hundreds of years, you know. Oh, when you have a headache, they sing this song and it takes the headache away. Or when you're feeling sad, you sing this song, and every song has a purpose and has a meaning. And that's the biggest thing with us in music therapy, right? How is it different than performance? Well, it has intention. And so I think that's one of the reasons it has such great potential for success there.
Yeah, it sounds like music therapy can really fit in seamlessly. I've seen just from experiences and from interacting with different people from various cultures that music as a part of healing and wellness is actually really a core, fundamental, inherent knowledge that's present in so many different culture groups. You know, people in India use chants and mantras for healing for specific ailments or specific celebrations and times in their life. I know chants are very important in many Native American tribes as well. And like, there's so many different people groups using music as a part of healing. Which brings me to kind of my next topic is what are the differences, what are the similarities, what is the role of like the Western music therapy approach with a culturally based music therapy approach from, in East Africa or maybe a different country? How do those things come into play together?
Sure. I think that at the core level, it's kind of the same thing, right? It's a lot of semantics, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I always say when we're working in Kenya and Uganda that people are already doing the work. They just know it works, but they don't necessarily understand like the science behind it, or there's not an explanation for it scientifically, right? When we hear a song on the radio, we start to tap our toe to the beat, we start to entrain to the beat. We know that our body does these things, but like, why does it do these things? And it was something that I think was not thought about until it was presented in a different way. And it was something certainly I didn't understand or know until I started studying the more Western side of things. So when I've been developing programs, I try and think about, okay, what are the common threads between these two? Mm-hmm. And what are the most important, vital things about music therapy that makes it what it is? And not to repeat myself, but to go back what I was saying earlier, music therapy for me is all about intention. Every song you're doing or every activity or everything you're doing, you have a specific goal in mind. You have an outcome that you know why you're choosing it, right? And eventually it becomes second nature. And so I think that the nature part of it is already there. They know that, okay, if my baby's not sleeping, I'll sing this soft, soothing sound and it will make them relaxed enough to fall asleep. Okay, why? So you just really providing the education, which in turn will allow for advocacy within their communities. I have a wonderful friend. His name's Mutinda Mukenya. He's one of the only music therapists in Nairobi that works in a hospital setting. He's been really pioneering, trying to get this kind of advocacy out there that music therapy works and it heals, and they use it for pain management in the hospital and trying to get out there. And so the more people we can kind of educate on this is why works the way it does, the more people we can have on the ground out there advocating, which will in turn create more opportunity for services to be had and for facilitators to get jobs.
Yeah, so it's what I hear is it's really all about taking the approaches of using music for healing and wellness that are already present in the culture and in the community, and sort of, bringing it into maybe a more scientific way and giving explanations and maybe providing strategies and empowering individuals who want to become music therapists to use those methods in a strategic way and maybe different settings than they have in the past, so that it's maybe a little bit more focused. Yeah
Definitely.
That's awesome.
Yeah
So for us as music therapists, we often work with diverse cultures and not even just cultures, but diverse people from different backgrounds. What advice would you give to a music therapist maybe working in the U.S. or teachers and allied healthcare professionals working in the U.S.? How do we approach being sensitive to other people groups? How do we approach providing culturally based music therapy treatment?
I think that the first thing to remember is that, for me anyway, I always try and say to myself, okay, how do I try and understand? But at a certain point, I think it's almost more valuable to say, I don't understand, and that's okay, right? I may never truly understand, and that's okay. But I'll do my best to try and hear you and ask you questions and meet you on a core level. So I think that oftentimes we focus on what makes us different and instead of what unites us as human beings and people. And I think to just be aware of your differences, be aware of your biases, check them, work on them, continue to do a lot of introspection and self-reflection on kind of where you're at and how you can continue to be supportive, be open, be an ally, and being able to hear people, really truly hear people out when they say, I'm having this issue in my workplace because I'm not being seen as so-and-so or whatever, hear people. And even if it's uncomfortable and even if it's challenging, it's important work. Everybody needs to do it. So that would be my biggest takeaway, is just to have an open mind and just try to, we all could improve on lots of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes down to it, music therapy and what I think, teaching and other therapy approaches should be, it's all about the patient. It's all about the client.
Right.
And so we're constantly trying to figure out what is going to be the thing that works best for this individual or for this group of people. And so if we can come to our sessions, to our classes with that type of mindset, and it's a core foundational music therapy skill that we should have. I think music therapists are really set up and equipped to be able to approach things in this way, but just being mindful that and looking at the whole person and understanding that their language, their culture, their background, their history with music, the way that they use music and creative arts in their life, like all of this is going to come into play in the music therapy session. So we need to be focused on what the patient needs in that exact moment, what this group of people needs in this exact moment, and being able to provide those strategies to help them, either succeed or to heal or to really become their best self and give them a safe space to express themselves creatively.
100% agree with that. Yeah.
Any last words that you want to say?
I just want to thank you for having me. I think this is such a special, wonderful series that you're doing. And that I really encourage and implore people to do this type of work. I think it's such an amazing, enriching thing. And, we all deserve access to the same services regardless of where we live. But keeping that in mind, keep the things we've talked about today about how to be culturally sensitive, how to approach going into a foreign place, and making the most of your experiences and making sure you're helping is, as long as you do that, go off into the world and explore and collaborate, because it's really a beautiful, wonderful thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brooke, for being here with me today. I'm so glad I got to meet you here at a national conference. We're here in Dallas for the AMTA National Conference. So I look forward to keeping in touch.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you again so much to our listeners for joining us and tuning into another episode of the Sound Solutions podcast. If you haven't listened to our previous podcasts yet, I encourage you to go check it out. You can find us on SoundCloud at Sound Solutions Podcast, or you can search Music Works Inc. And please check out musictherapyandwellnesshub.com. Music Therapy and Wellness Hub is an online resource for our music therapists, music therapy students, educators, allied healthcare professionals, and caregivers, providing you with music therapy, continuing education, and music-centered wellness resources for you. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.